Okay. So, um, this is a second rant, or really a second voiceover. Again, unscripted over some artwork I was working on for over a day. I kind of like took a break from it and came back. This is more like an original environment that I made. I'm kind of just like scribbling in the shading and pieces of it at the moment. It was kind of meant to be a bunch of islands floating above another island. I might do another one later, like a different environment, possibly with some more swirls or not swirls. I mean, like completely different shapes than this one. Maybe from a different angle, because this environment, I think I might have maybe drawn something like this before. Not this particular picture, but something like this. I was kind of thinking of like the ectospheric mod from Minecraft when I made this. Used to play a lot. Used to. Anyway, this is just some work I'm doing with that. Um, I'm thinking that as time goes on, this should just improve as I come up with more difficulties and just take my time with it. I know I said in like a previous video about like the emotions of art. I have like something a little bit later planned in this one. Like maybe not completely scripted, but I have a plan at least as I'm drawing this. A bit of architecture, just adding in cracks, kind of like a desert maybe. Place is very dry. Not a lot of foliage going on here. Oh, and at this point, I decided to start working on making sort of like a tiger beetle and dragonfly hybrid with feathered wings. I don't know exactly where I get these ideas from, but I'd like to think that they're somewhat original. I remember I was on TikTok the other day and I was like kind of like scrolling and I saw like Hirohiko Araki's tribute to Rory Kenshin. Absolute excrement of a tribute for an artist of his caliber, isn't it? It almost looks like he let a child color it in, yet it's famous. Many people suspect the reason why this tribute looks so board touched is because it's related to the author of Rory Kenshin's recent controversy. Despite being a fan of JoJo's, Araki's other tributes he eluded me. Like I didn't really know about them that much. And when I saw them, they were as typical of his art as they could be. I mean, obviously they looked nice, but it was kind of just like, oh, he drew that. He drew that for Naruto. He drew that for DBZ. But I feel like this one, the one he made for Rory Kenshin, is special and particularly beautiful in its own way. Even though it's technically, on a technical level, it's worse than the others. But on a spiritual level, it's great because he clearly put feelings into it. Feelings so strong that they extend beyond professionalism or decorum. And it honestly feels like it had the opposite intended effect when he made this tribute. Because I didn't know about any of his other tributes. And I've been watching JoJo for like 6 years. And then when I heard of this one, I was like, oh, wow, that looks terrible. Why does it look so bad? And then what many may perceive as an insult is something I like to think is quite precious. Because you're never really angry at something you don't care about. And being able to feel while you're drawing something, like having feelings as you're creating it, strong feelings, or to feel someone else's feelings through their drawing is something very special. And you can tell how Araki felt about him based on how this drawing looks when compared to like his other works. He clearly, and something there tells you he didn't like him. Um, I think I want to talk about maybe like I guess briefly why I think emotion can be kind of important to artwork. I mean, in my like real life, I go a lot of places. I'm not particularly emotional or animated. I wouldn't call myself a professional person outside of work, but I'm not particularly like emotional or animated when it comes to things or how I feel about things. Like if something makes me really happy, I'm not really one to smile about it. Or something makes me really sad, I don't cry about it. But I do have feelings, and I feel like they can be important to art. Maybe the feeling trying to be expressed over like the technical correctness of your creation at times could be important. And I don't mean that like feelings always come over technical prowess. I feel like there should be a mix of both. Maybe it's not absurdly technically perfect, like, the panels of Berserk, but it's not completely emotionally based, like what it feels like when I was watching Monogatari. But like every moment in that show was very emotionally charged with its characters. They had like scenes changing locations and metaphors playing out on the screen with characters like standing in the highway while having like not a normal, a strenuous, calm conversation over the phone. It was a lot. It was a lot of metaphors and stuff. It's where the emotions took over the the illustration of the story. Often, and it wasn't illustrated through characters' faces or told through thought. It was kind of told through like, gosh, I'm not a writer, but I'll just hang up on this for a second. It was told like not merely through saying something like, "Oh, he's sad." Like that's bad. Everyone like agrees that's bad writing. And better is more like, "Oh, he was blue. His lips turned down at the corners while he scrunched his nose and began to sniffle." And at that point, you get the emotion is like sadness. And you understand that, like, oh, that character is really sad. But like in Nishio Ishin's writing, when he's writing Bake Monogatari, I'm gonna be honest, I didn't read the light novel, but I did watch the anime. It seems like he conveys emotion not just through character expression, but through like worldly perception. It gets to the point where like the way they see the world shifts and is different. And I feel like that's something pretty cool. The world around them changes. And in art, I feel like there's something I can learn from that. It's a book and it's writing. And normally you look at other art pieces for inspiration. But I would say like the way they handled, uh, I think it was like the Kuzemonogatari movies. I don't know if I pronounced that right. I probably butchered the name on it. Is that there's like a scene where after Oragi wins, that there's like a scene where like he's talking to Kishant Orion Heart Underblade. Really hard name to forget. Kishant Orion Heart Underblade. Just call it Heart Underblade for short. Where they're essentially returning to normalcy. And the way this plays out is like they don't say, "Oh, so I guess everything's going back to normal now after my amazing adventure in around the city fighting this vampire woman and collecting her parts." It's more like they have him appear in assembly. Like the scene just spawns in an assembly. There's just an assembly there now. And more interestingly, the fight takes place in like a track field, not in the city streets or like a standard arena. It takes place on a track field, almost as if to emphasize that it's a race against time. Like literally. It's funny. I like that. I really like that about the story. And so with that, I decided to draw like a stylized perception of emotions first in their most raw form. I kind of perceive anger, or the way I feel it, is like a bunch of spiky, scattered lines, somewhat dense, somewhat not dense. And then a fear for others is more like light swirling. It's almost disconnected from the paper for me. Like when I experience fear, but for someone else. And then there's confusion, which is just a bunch of shapes together. I like to implement these ideas into my art when I'm making it to kind of like portray an emotion, but the shape of it. Now, the scribbles from earlier was just a more simplified version of how I really view anger, which is firstly, the feeling feels kind of cold and distant, but it's also sharp. When I'm upset with people, I feel the sharp and cold and distant. I don't like it. I don't like whatever is bothering me. And so I kind of drew like a guy's face with spikes and just really detached eyes. Of course, that's just like my stylized version of how I feel anger. And it implements some technical aspects of the drawing while still maintaining the emotional continuity of it. Like, yeah, this is how that emotion makes me feel. And I decided to go back in over the same thing about 2 additional times, so like a total of 3, to kind of like, I guess, it kind of conveys how unpredictable anger feels. Because when you're truly angry at something, truly, like you genuinely hate something, I don't know, it feels like things that I normally like just are in danger if I'm upset. And then there's like a fear of others, which I kind of view as like a splitting feeling. Like part of me is stuck in the past and the other part of me is going forward. It's kind of like a multitude of fearful faces trying to get away from one another, or really, which is just, situational avoidance when I'm afraid for other people. And so it's a pulling, a tugging, sort of. It's a multitude, almost like a split from the center. Very uncomfortable feeling, uh, if you will, as I scribble in the faces and whatnot. And then finally, there's confusion, which I just kind of perceive as like a bunch of rudimentary shapes that don't quite connect and don't belong with one another. They just look bad. Even the eyes are in awkward places and the mouth is in like a strange location. And that's just how it I perceive it. And then there's like the really sanitized emotion, which is like the sketches people do often when they draw anger or something. Make it as clear as possible. Like, oh, this person's angry. We're going to give them angry lips, no teeth, because that person's definitely upset in case you didn't notice. But the downturned lips, and oh, yeah, you got to flare the nostrils there too. Very common. Some people draw anger uh, with this similar facial expression with narrowed eyes and downturned eyebrows and an intense looking face. And then sometimes there's the anime version where there's just one eye really angry or both eyes really angry and the face doesn't have any real consistent shape to it. It kind of just looks like that. And I feel like these emotions are kind of sanitized and very common to see. It may not be uh, exactly how a person feels when they're angry, but for me though, the way I feel, yeah, exactly, most of the time is cold spikes. I mean, there's the fear for others, which is just kind of like looking off to the side. Ironically, it's looking at the 2 faces over there. And, you have your sweating bullets, your upturned eyebrows, your more docile eyes, and a character who isn't quite showing teeth. Of course, you can always include it, but generally it's, makes it look strange. And then confusion is just the typical squiggly line, as well as the pondering face of, like, what did that person say, or what is going on here? This guy, this guy doesn't really know what's happening right now. He's just kind of like looking and thinking, oh, it's kind of weird. And, he's scratching the side of his face with his little finger. Anyway, that's just the rant. Oh, also, here's me drawing the thumbnail for the video.